Welcome to my channel. Let me ask you a very simple question. What if I told you that the reason you are not speaking English fluently today is not because you are bad at English, not because you are too old, and not because you do not have enough talent? What if the real reason is something much smaller, something that most learners never notice? Every day, millions of people around the world spend hours studying English. They memorize grammar rules. They learn vocabulary lists. They watch videos. They download apps. They promise themselves that this time they will finally become fluent. But months pass. Sometimes years pass. And nothing really changes. They still feel nervous when speaking. They still struggle to understand native speakers. They still doubt themselves. Why does this happen? And more importantly, how can you avoid making the same mistake? Today, I am going to share a powerful roadmap that can completely change the way you learn English. These are not complicated techniques. These are not secret tricks that only experts know. These are simple lessons that can help your brain learn English faster and more naturally. By the end of this video, you will understand why some learners improve quickly while others stay stuck for years. You will discover how to think in English, how to understand spoken English more easily, how to speak with confidence even if you are a beginner, and how to create a daily system that keeps improving your English month after month. So stay with me until the end, because one idea from this video could save you years of frustration and completely transform your English journey. And remember, while you listen to this story in simple English, you are already improving your listening skills. Now take a deep breath, focus your mind, and let us begin a journey that could change your English forever. Chapter 1. Let me tell you about a young man named Daniel. Daniel was 24 years old. He had one dream that stayed inside his heart for many years. He wanted to speak English fluently. He wanted to watch movies without subtitles. He wanted to talk confidently with people from different countries. He wanted better job opportunities. He wanted a better future. Every year, Daniel promised himself that this would be the year he finally learned English. Every January, he bought a new grammar book. Every February, he downloaded a new English learning app. Every March, he watched motivational videos about language learning. And every December, he looked back and realized something painful. His English was almost the same as it was 1 year ago. Maybe you know this feeling. Maybe you have experienced it yourself. You study, you learn new words, you watch videos, you read lessons. But when someone asks you a simple question in English, your mind suddenly becomes empty. The words disappear. The confidence disappears. Everything disappears. Daniel felt exactly the same way. One evening, he sat alone in his room. He opened his notebook and looked at hundreds of grammar rules he had written over the years. Present simple, present continuous, past simple, future tense, conditionals, passive voice. He knew many rules. He knew many definitions, but he still could not speak comfortably. He looked at himself in the mirror and asked a painful question. Why am I still struggling? At first, he thought he was not smart enough. Then he thought maybe English was just too difficult. Then he thought maybe some people are naturally talented and others are not. But the truth was completely different. The problem was never his intelligence. The problem was never his memory. The problem was never English itself. The problem was his learning method. You see, many English learners make the same mistake. They believe learning English means studying English. They believe that if they memorize enough rules, they will magically become fluent one day. But language does not work that way. Imagine a person who spends 10 years reading books about swimming. He learns every rule. He understands every technique. He can explain how swimming works better than anyone else. But there is one problem. He never enters the water. What happens when he finally jumps into a swimming pool? He struggles. Why? Because knowledge without practice is incomplete. English works exactly the same way. Many learners spend years studying the language but very little time actually using it. They collect grammar rules like trophies. They collect vocabulary lists like treasure. But they rarely speak. They rarely listen. They rarely use English in real life. Then they wonder why fluency never arrives. Daniel was trapped inside this cycle for years. Every time he made a mistake, he felt embarrassed. Every time he spoke English, he worried about sounding foolish. He wanted every sentence to be perfect. He wanted every word to be correct. He wanted people to admire his English. But perfection became his biggest enemy. One day, something unexpected happened. Daniel met an older man named Michael at a local coffee shop. Michael spoke excellent English. His pronunciation was clear. His confidence was impressive. Daniel assumed Michael must have studied English in a special school or lived abroad for many years. But when he asked him about his secret, Michael smiled and said something very simple. He said, "When I started learning English, I made hundreds of mistakes every week." Daniel was shocked. Michael continued, "I spoke even when I sounded terrible. I listened even when I understood only 20%. I read even when I needed a dictionary every few minutes. I stopped worrying about being perfect. I focused on improving." Those words stayed inside Daniel's mind for days. Suddenly, he realized something powerful. He had spent years trying to avoid mistakes. But mistakes were actually part of the learning process. Think about a child learning to walk. The child falls again and again. Nobody expects perfection. Nobody says, "You fell down. Maybe walking is not for you." No. The child continues trying. The child falls hundreds of times. Eventually, the child walks naturally. Learning English is no different. Every mistake is a step forward. Every awkward sentence is progress. Every pronunciation error is part of the journey. The people who improve quickly understand this secret. They do not wait until they feel ready. They start before they feel ready. They speak before they feel confident. They practice before they feel comfortable. And little by little, their English grows stronger. Another mistake Daniel discovered was waiting for motivation. Some days he felt excited about learning. Other days he felt tired. When motivation disappeared, his practice disappeared too. But successful learners do not depend on motivation. They depend on habits. They understand that 20 minutes every day is more powerful than 5 hours once a month. They understand that consistency beats intensity. Imagine two people. The first person studies English for 4 hours on one Sunday and then does nothing for the next 6 days. The second person studies only 20 minutes every day. After a few months, the second person usually makes much more progress. Why? Because language learning is like watering a plant. A little water every day creates growth. A huge amount of water once a month does not. This was the moment Daniel's journey changed forever. He stopped asking, "How can I learn English perfectly?" Instead, he started asking, "How can I use English every day?" It was a small change, but it transformed everything. He listened to simple English while walking. He spoke short sentences to himself. He read easy stories before bed. He stopped chasing perfection and started chasing progress. Slowly, something amazing happened. His confidence increased. His vocabulary grew. His listening improved. For the first time in years, he could see real results. My friend, if you are struggling with English right now, I want you to remember this lesson. The biggest reason people learn English slowly is not because they are stupid. It is not because they are too old. It is not because English is impossible. The biggest reason is that they focus too much on studying and not enough on using the language. They wait for perfection instead of embracing progress. They fear mistakes instead of learning from them. But today, that can change. Today, you can make a different decision. You can stop worrying about being perfect. You can stop comparing yourself to others. You can stop waiting for the perfect moment. Because the perfect moment does not exist. The only moment that exists is now. And in the next chapter, I am going to show you one of the most powerful secrets for learning English fast. It is a method that helps your brain stop translating and start thinking directly in English. This simple shift can completely transform your learning journey. So stay with me, because the most important lesson is coming next. Chapter 2. At the end of the last chapter, Daniel discovered a powerful truth. He realized that learning English was not about collecting grammar rules. It was about using the language every day. But even after this realization, he still faced one big problem. Every time he wanted to speak English, his brain became slow. Very slow. Imagine this situation. Someone asked him a simple question. "How was your day?" Daniel knew the answer. He wanted to say, "My day was good. I went to work and then I visited my friend." But before he could speak, something happened inside his mind. First, he created the sentence in his native language. Then he translated it into English word by word. Then he checked the grammar. Then he worried about pronunciation. Then he became nervous. By the time he was ready to answer, the conversation had already moved on. Maybe this sounds familiar. Maybe you have experienced the same struggle. Many English learners believe they have a speaking problem, but often they have a thinking problem. Their brain is trapped inside a translation machine. Every sentence must pass through two languages before it reaches their mouth. This process is slow, exhausting, and frustrating. One afternoon, Daniel watched an interview with a fluent English speaker. The interviewer asked a difficult question, and the speaker answered immediately. There was no pause, no struggle, no visible translation. The words flowed naturally. Daniel became curious. He wondered, how is this possible? Then he learned a secret that changed everything. Fluent speakers do not translate every sentence. They think directly in English. At first, this idea sounded impossible. Daniel thought, how can I think in English when my English is not fluent? But then he discovered something important. Thinking in English does not start with complicated sentences. It starts with very simple words. The next morning, Daniel decided to try something new. He woke up and looked around his room. Instead of naming things in his native language, he named them in English. Bed, window, door, chair, table, phone, book. Simple words, tiny words. But something interesting happened. For the first time, his brain started connecting directly with English. Later that day, he walked into the kitchen. Instead of thinking in his native language, he quietly said to himself, I am making coffee. The coffee is hot. The cup is on the table. The sentences were simple. They were not perfect, but they were English. Day after day, he continued this habit. When he opened a door, he thought, I am opening the door. When he sat down, he thought, I am sitting on the chair. When he went outside, he thought, the weather is nice today. Slowly, his brain began changing. Think about how a road is built. The first time a car drives across an empty field, there is no road. The path is rough and difficult. But if thousands of cars follow the same route every day, eventually a clear road appears. Your brain works in a similar way. Every time you think in English, you build a stronger mental pathway. At first, it feels uncomfortable. At first, it feels unnatural. But over time, the pathway becomes stronger and faster. One evening, Daniel experienced something that shocked him. He was walking home after work when he suddenly noticed that he was thinking in English without trying. It lasted only a few seconds, but it felt incredible. His brain had created an English thought automatically. It was a small victory, but it gave him enormous confidence. This is the moment many learners never reach because they quit too early. They try thinking in English for 1 day or 2 days and then stop. They expect immediate results. But language learning is not magic. It is training. Every small effort matters. Every simple sentence matters. Every moment of practice matters. Another mistake Daniel used to make was believing that thinking in English required advanced vocabulary. This belief stopped him from practicing. But the truth is very different. You do not need thousands of words to start thinking in English. You only need the words you already know. If you know 10 words, use those 10 words. If you know 50 words, use those 50 words. If your sentence is simple, that is completely fine. Remember, a child does not begin speaking with perfect grammar and advanced vocabulary. A child starts with small words and small sentences. Growth happens naturally over time. As the weeks passed, Daniel noticed another surprising change. His speaking speed improved. He was no longer translating every sentence. He was creating English thoughts directly. His confidence increased because his brain was no longer carrying the heavy burden of constant translation. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack every day. At first, you may not notice the weight, but once you remove it, you suddenly feel lighter and faster. Translation is that heavy backpack. Thinking directly in English removes the extra weight from your mind. One day, Daniel met a tourist who needed directions. Normally, he would have felt nervous. Normally, he would have searched desperately for words. But this time, something different happened. The tourist asked a question, and Daniel answered naturally. His English was not perfect. He made a few mistakes, but he communicated successfully. The tourist understood him. The conversation continued, and for the first time in his life, Daniel felt what real communication felt like. It was not about perfect grammar. It was not about perfect pronunciation. It was about connection. It was about sharing ideas. It was about understanding and being understood. That moment became one of the happiest moments in his English journey. My friend, I want you to understand something very important. If you want to improve your English fast, you must stop treating English like a school subject and start treating it like a language. Languages are not meant to live inside books. They are meant to live inside your mind. They are meant to become part of your daily life. Start small. Look around your room and name objects in English. Describe your daily activities. Talk to yourself. Think about your plans in English. Do not worry about mistakes. Do not worry about perfection. Your goal is not to sound like an expert tomorrow. Your goal is to train your brain a little more every day. Because one day, just like Daniel, you will suddenly notice something amazing. English thoughts will begin appearing naturally. Sentences will come faster. Conversations will feel easier, and you will realize that your brain is no longer translating every word. It is finally beginning to think in English. But there is another secret that makes this process even faster. A secret that many successful learners use every single day. In the next chapter, we are going to explore the incredible power of listening. Because before you can speak English fluently, your brain must hear enough English to build a strong foundation. And what you are about to learn may completely change the way you practice forever. Chapter 3. At the end of the last chapter, Daniel discovered something powerful. He learned how to train his brain to think in English. Slowly, his mind was becoming faster. Slowly, English was becoming more natural. But there was still one problem that frustrated him almost every day. Whenever he watched an English movie, listened to a podcast, or heard native speakers talking, it felt like they were speaking at the speed of light. The words came too fast. The sentences disappeared before he could understand them. Sometimes he caught one word, sometimes two. But most of the conversation sounded like one long, confusing sound. This made Daniel feel discouraged. He started asking himself questions that many English learners ask every day. Why can I understand English when I read it, but not when I hear it? Why do native speakers sound so fast? Will I ever understand real English conversations? One evening, Daniel was sitting in his room feeling frustrated. He opened his laptop and searched for advice from successful English learners. As he listened to their stories, he noticed something interesting. Almost all of them shared the same habit. They listened to English every single day, not once a week, not only when they felt motivated, every day. At first, Daniel did not understand why listening was so important. He believed speaking was the most important skill. He thought that if he wanted to speak English, he should spend all his time speaking. But then he learned something that completely changed his perspective. Before children learn to speak, they spend months and even years listening. Think about a baby. A baby does not open a grammar book. A baby does not memorize vocabulary lists. A baby listens, day after day, month after month, year after year. The baby hears words, sounds, patterns, and expressions thousands of times. Eventually, the brain begins recognizing them naturally. Speaking comes later. Listening comes first. This realization hit Daniel like a flash of lightning. He suddenly understood why he had struggled for so long. He wanted to speak English fluently, but he had not given his brain enough English to absorb. It was like trying to take water out of an empty well. There was simply not enough English inside his mind yet. The next day, Daniel made a decision. He would make listening a daily habit. But instead of choosing difficult movies or advanced podcasts, he started with simple content. Very simple content. He listened to short English stories designed for beginners. He listened to slow conversations. He listened to easy English videos. At first, he understood only part of what he heard. But something interesting happened. Because the content was simple, he did not feel overwhelmed. He could follow the story. He could recognize familiar words. His confidence started growing. Every morning during breakfast, he listened to 10 minutes of English. Every evening before bed, he listened to another 10 minutes. Sometimes he listened while walking. Sometimes he listened while cleaning his room. Little by little, English became part of his daily life. 1 week passed, then another, then another. Suddenly, Daniel noticed something surprising. Words that once sounded strange now sounded familiar. Expressions he had heard many times started appearing naturally in his thoughts. His pronunciation improved without him even trying. This is one of the hidden powers of listening. When you listen regularly, your brain becomes familiar with the natural rhythm of English. You begin hearing how words connect together. You begin hearing where native speakers pause. You begin hearing how sentences flow naturally. Many learners spend years trying to improve pronunciation by memorizing rules. But often, the fastest teacher is listening itself. The more you hear correct English, the more your brain learns to imitate it. One day, Daniel experienced a moment he would never forget. He was watching a simple English video online. Normally, he would need subtitles. Normally, he would pause every few seconds. But this time, something different happened. He understood an entire sentence without subtitles. Then another sentence. Then another. He sat up straight in his chair. His heart started beating faster. He could hardly believe it. For the first time, he was understanding English naturally. It felt like opening a door that had been locked for years. The feeling was incredible. It was not perfect. He still missed some words. He still had a long journey ahead. But that small victory changed everything. It proved that progress was happening. It proved that daily listening was working. Many learners never experience this breakthrough because they make one common mistake. They choose content that is far too difficult. They watch advanced movies. They listen to complicated interviews. They try to understand everything immediately. Then they become frustrated and quit. Imagine going to a gym for the first time and trying to lift the heaviest weight in the building. What would happen? You would fail. You might even get injured. Learning English works the same way. You must start with content that matches your current level. Success creates confidence. Confidence creates motivation. Motivation creates consistency. Consistency creates results. Daniel learned another important lesson about listening. There are two powerful ways to practice. The first is active listening. This means sitting down and focusing completely on the English. Listening carefully. Paying attention to words and meanings. The second is passive listening. This means listening while doing other activities like walking, cooking, or cleaning. Both methods are valuable. Active listening helps you learn deeply. Passive listening increases your exposure. Together, they create powerful results. As the months passed, Daniel noticed changes that went beyond listening. His speaking became smoother. His vocabulary grew naturally. He needed less time to form sentences. Why? Because listening had filled his brain with English. Every story, every conversation, every sentence became another brick in the foundation of his language skills. Slowly, English stopped feeling foreign. It started feeling familiar. My friend, if there is one lesson I want you to remember from this chapter, it is this. Listening is not a small part of learning English. Listening is the foundation. It is the fuel that powers your progress. It is the bridge between studying English and truly understanding English. Do not worry if you cannot understand everything today. Do not worry if native speakers still sound fast. Every minute you listen is training your brain. Every sentence you hear is making you stronger. Every day of listening is bringing you closer to fluency. One day, just like Daniel, you will experience that magical moment when English suddenly becomes clearer. You will understand a conversation without subtitles. You will follow a story naturally. You will realize that your brain has been changing all along. But now another challenge awaits. Understanding English is powerful. Thinking in English is powerful. Yet there is one skill that many learners fear more than anything else: speaking. The moment when you must open your mouth and use the language yourself. In the next chapter, we are going to destroy that fear forever. We are going to learn how to speak English with confidence, even if you are still a beginner. And what Daniel discovered next completely changed the way he viewed mistakes, confidence, and communication. Chapter 4. At the end of the last chapter, Daniel discovered the incredible power of listening. Day by day, his understanding improved. English no longer sounded like random noise. Words became clearer. Sentences became easier to understand. His confidence was growing. But there was still one giant mountain standing in front of him. It was the same mountain that stops millions of English learners around the world. Speaking. The moment you must open your mouth and use English in front of another person. The moment when your heart beats faster. The moment when your hands feel nervous. The moment when you wonder, what if I make a mistake? Daniel knew this feeling very well. In fact, he was terrified of speaking English. Every time he had an opportunity to speak, fear immediately appeared inside his mind. His brain filled with questions. What if my grammar is wrong? What if they laugh at my accent? What if I forget the words? What if I sound foolish? Because of these fears, Daniel avoided speaking whenever possible. He listened, he studied, he practiced alone. But when it was time to actually speak, he became silent. One afternoon, Daniel attended an online English conversation group. There were learners from different countries. Some spoke very well. Others were complete beginners. Daniel joined the meeting, turned on his camera, and listened quietly. He told himself he would only watch. Then the teacher asked a simple question. Can everyone tell us a little about themselves? One by one, people started speaking. Some made grammar mistakes. Some struggled to find words. Some spoke slowly. Yet nobody laughed. Nobody criticized them. Everyone simply communicated. Then Daniel noticed something surprising. A learner named Maria was speaking confidently, even though her English was far from perfect. She made mistakes. She paused often. Sometimes she used the wrong word. But she kept talking. She kept smiling. She kept communicating. At the end of the meeting, people congratulated her for her effort. They understood her message. They appreciated her courage. Daniel could not stop thinking about this. On the way home, he asked himself an important question. Why is Maria improving faster than me? The answer was simple. Maria was willing to make mistakes. Daniel was trying to avoid them. That night, he learned one of the most important lessons of his entire English journey. Mistakes are not evidence of failure. Mistakes are evidence of learning. Think about a baby learning to walk. The baby falls again and again. Nobody says the baby is failing. The falling is part of the process. In the same way, every mistake you make while speaking English is proof that you are practicing. It is proof that you are growing. The next morning, Daniel made a decision. He would stop waiting for perfect English. He would start speaking with the English he already had. His first exercise was simple. He stood in front of a mirror and talked to himself for 5 minutes every day. At first, it felt strange, very strange. He described his day. He talked about his plans. He talked about his favorite food. Sometimes he forgot words. Sometimes he repeated the same sentence several times. But every day became a little easier. Then he discovered another powerful technique called shadowing. He listened to a short English sentence and repeated it immediately after the speaker. He copied the pronunciation. He copied the rhythm. He copied the emotion. At first, his pronunciation sounded awkward, but after a few weeks, he noticed a big improvement. His speech became smoother. His confidence became stronger. Another habit changed everything. Daniel started recording his voice. The first recording shocked him. He hated how he sounded. He noticed every mistake, every pause, every pronunciation problem. He almost deleted the recording immediately. But then he listened again 1 month later. Something incredible happened. He sounded better, not perfect, but better. Then he compared it with a recording from 2 months later. The improvement was obvious. For the first time, he could hear his own progress. This gave him enormous motivation. Many learners quit because they cannot see their improvement. But when you record yourself regularly, you create proof. You can literally hear yourself becoming better. As the weeks passed, Daniel became braver. He started having short conversations online. He joined language exchange groups. He practiced with other learners. Sometimes the conversations were difficult. Sometimes he felt nervous. Sometimes he made embarrassing mistakes. But something important happened after every conversation. He survived. The world did not end. Nobody laughed. Nobody attacked him. Most people were supportive because they were learning too. One day, Daniel discovered another powerful tool. He started practicing conversations with artificial intelligence. Whenever he had free time, he opened a chat and practiced English. He asked questions. He answered questions. He described his day. He talked about his goals. The best part was that he could practice without fear. There was no pressure, no judgment, no embarrassment. This daily practice helped him become more comfortable with speaking English naturally. Then came the moment he would never forget. One afternoon, a tourist approached him and asked for directions. A few months earlier, Daniel would have panicked. His mind would have frozen. He probably would have avoided the conversation completely. But this time, something different happened. The tourist spoke. Daniel understood the question. He answered in English. The conversation continued for almost 2 minutes. It was not a perfect conversation. He made mistakes. He paused sometimes. But he communicated successfully. When the tourist smiled and thanked him, Daniel felt a wave of happiness rush through his body. He walked away with a huge smile on his face. For years, speaking English had felt impossible. Now it was becoming real. My friend, I want you to remember something very important. Confidence does not come before speaking. Confidence comes from speaking. Many learners believe they must wait until they feel confident. But confidence is created through action. Every conversation makes you stronger. Every mistake teaches you something. Every sentence builds your ability. Imagine two learners. The first learner waits until everything is perfect. The second learner starts speaking today, even with mistakes. 1 year later, who will speak better English? The answer is obvious. The brave learner always wins. The learner who practices always improves. The learner who accepts mistakes always grows faster. You do not need perfect English to start speaking. You only need courage. A little courage today becomes confidence tomorrow. A little practice today becomes fluency tomorrow. Every fluent English speaker was once a beginner. Every confident speaker once felt nervous. Every successful learner once struggled exactly where you are struggling now. The difference is simple. They kept going. They spoke anyway. They practiced anyway. They improved anyway. And now, Daniel was finally beginning to understand this truth. He could think in English. He could understand more English. He could speak with growing confidence. But there was one final secret that would bring everything together. One final lesson that separates people who improve for a few weeks from people who improve for years. In the next chapter, we are going to discover the daily English system that changes everything. A simple system that can transform your English step by step, day by day, until one day you look back and realize you have become the person you once dreamed of becoming. Chapter 5. At the end of the last chapter, Daniel discovered something that changed his confidence forever. He learned that speaking English was not about being perfect. It was about being brave enough to practice. Little by little, he was becoming the person he always wanted to be. He could understand more English. He could think in English. He could speak English with growing confidence. But there was still one final lesson waiting for him. A lesson that separates successful learners from people who quit. A lesson that determines whether someone improves for a few weeks or continues improving for years. One evening, Daniel sat in his room and looked back at his journey. He remembered all the times he had started learning English with excitement. He remembered buying books, downloading apps, and making big promises to himself. He remembered saying things like, "This time will be different. This year I will become fluent." Yet somehow, after a few weeks, the excitement always disappeared. Life became busy. Motivation became weaker. Practice became less frequent. Eventually, he stopped. Then one day he would start again from the beginning. The cycle repeated itself for years. As he reflected on this pattern, he realized something important. Motivation was never the real solution. Motivation comes and goes. Some days you feel excited. Some days you feel tired. Some days you want to study. Some days you want to do nothing at all. If success depends only on motivation, progress becomes unpredictable. Then Daniel learned one of the most powerful truths in personal development. Successful people do not rely on motivation. They rely on systems. A system is simply a routine that you follow whether you feel motivated or not. Think about brushing your teeth. You do not wake up every morning and ask yourself if you feel motivated to brush your teeth. You simply do it because it is part of your routine. Imagine if English practice became just as normal. Imagine if studying English was not something you occasionally remembered. Imagine if it became part of your daily life. This idea fascinated Daniel. Instead of creating huge study plans that lasted only a few days, he decided to build a simple system. a system so easy that he could follow it every day. He started with 40 minutes, just 40 minutes, 10 minutes of listening, 10 minutes of reading, 10 minutes of speaking, 10 minutes of reviewing vocabulary. That was it. No complicated schedule, no impossible goals, no 6-hour study sessions, just 40 minutes every day. At first, the routine seemed almost too simple. Daniel wondered if such a small effort could really make a difference. But he decided to trust the process. Every morning, he listened to simple English content for 10 minutes. Every afternoon, he read an easy English story. Every evening, he practiced speaking. Before bed, he reviewed vocabulary words. Day after day, he repeated the same routine. Then something interesting happened. 1 week became 2 weeks. 2 weeks became 1 month. 1 month became 3 months. Unlike his old study plans, this one survived. Why? Because it was realistic, it was sustainable, it fit naturally into his life. Most people underestimate the power of small daily actions. They want dramatic results immediately. They want to become fluent in 30 days. They want instant success. But life rarely works that way. Imagine planting a seed in the ground. You water it every day. For weeks, nothing seems to happen. You look at the soil and see no change. It would be easy to believe the process is not working. But underneath the surface, something incredible is happening. Roots are growing, strength is developing, progress is occurring where you cannot see it. English learning works exactly the same way. Every day of practice is like watering a seed. The changes may feel invisible at first, but they are happening. One afternoon, Daniel found an old notebook from 6 months earlier. He opened it and started reading sentences he had written at the beginning of his journey. He could hardly believe what he saw. The sentences were shorter. The vocabulary was simpler. The mistakes were more frequent. Without realizing it, he had improved dramatically. This is one of the beautiful things about consistency. Daily progress feels small, but when you look back after several months, the difference can be enormous. Another habit transformed Daniel's progress. He started keeping an English journal. Every night he wrote a few simple sentences about his day. Sometimes he wrote about work. Sometimes he wrote about his goals. Sometimes he wrote about things that made him happy. The sentences were not perfect. The grammar was not always correct. But every page represented practice. Every page represented growth. Months later, reading those old journal entries felt like traveling back in time. He could literally see his improvement on paper. Then Daniel discovered another secret. He began creating an English environment around himself. He changed his phone settings to English. He followed English learning channels. He listened to English during walks. He surrounded himself with the language whenever possible. Instead of making English something separate from life, he made it part of life. This simple change accelerated his progress even more. One day, Daniel met a friend he had not seen for almost a year. During their conversation, his friend suddenly stopped and looked surprised. "Your English has improved a lot," he said. Daniel smiled. For a moment, he felt proud, not because of talent, not because of intelligence, but because he knew the truth. His progress was the result of hundreds of small daily actions. It was the result of showing up consistently. It was the result of following a simple system when nobody was watching. As the months continued passing, Daniel noticed changes beyond English. His discipline improved, his confidence improved, his belief in himself improved. He realized that learning English was not only changing his language skills, it was changing his identity. He was becoming someone who kept promises to himself, someone who practiced even on difficult days, someone who continued moving forward when progress felt slow. My friend, I want you to imagine something. Imagine yourself 6 months from now. Imagine understanding English videos much more easily. Imagine reading stories without constantly using a dictionary. Imagine speaking with confidence instead of fear. Imagine having conversations that once seemed impossible. Imagine opportunities opening in your career, your education, and your life. This future is not created by one perfect day. It is created by many ordinary days. One listening session, one reading session, one speaking practice, one vocabulary review, again and again and again. That is how transformation happens. Not through magic, not through shortcuts, not through secret tricks, through consistency, through patience, through daily action. Daniel eventually understood a truth that many people never learn. English is not mastered in one day. It is mastered one day at a time. Every day you practice, you become slightly stronger. Every day you continue, you move one step closer to fluency. And if you refuse to quit, if you keep showing up, if you trust the process, the results will eventually come. They always do. Today, you stand exactly where Daniel once stood. You have a choice. You can close this video and continue doing what you have always done. Or you can make a decision that your future self will thank you for. You can start small. You can start today. You can build your own English system. Because the person who improves their English is not the most talented person. It is not the smartest person. It is the person who refuses to stop. It is the person who keeps going when progress feels slow. It is the person who understands that every small step matters. And perhaps, months from now, you will look back at this moment and realize that this was the day everything began. The day you stopped dreaming about speaking English fluently and started building the habits that made it possible.